Welcome to the GateDrop podcast. GateDrop.com, giving you the jump in motocross news.
GateDrop.com, Arco MXGP review, and Andy, for a World Championship event, it's hard to get any much better than Arco di Trentino. An amazing track. I thought it worked really well, going the wrong way around, as it were. Obviously, an incredible location, but the racing was fantastic as well, especially with the fans. Almost Tim Gajser's home Grand Prix, you would say. And he's certainly produced in front of the home fans. 1-1, and he's the guy to beat.
Absolutely. It was quite strange, actually, seeing the track going the reverse way from normal. But I thought it was, sometimes you're a little bit scared whenever they're going to announce changes because you don't know how it's going to go, and sometimes it can make it worse. But actually, this time, admittedly, it was hard to pass, but even running the normal direction, it's still hard to pass. And I felt the track was slower than the other way, and it got very rough and technical. So actually, I thought the changes were really good, and I really enjoyed the track. And yeah, Tim Gajser, phenomenal. But you know, even though he dominated that second moto completely, sometimes when that happens, the racing can be boring. But actually, the racing was fantastic, and I would say race-wise, that was maybe the best GP of the year so far, entertainment-wise. It was really, really good, and lots of battles on track, so it was exciting stuff.
Yeah, for both classes to have 1-1 winners, the racing, as you say, was really, really entertaining. At no point it really had a lull. And the track had a bit of everything. You couldn't just pin it to win it. As Ryan Villapoto found out a few years ago at Arco, you had to think, you had to take good lines, you had to be careful on the throttle in some places, and you could be more aggressive in others. And it had a wee bit of everything, but Tim Gajser's so good at the minute that sort of track probably suits him perfectly. He's very good on the throttle with lines and throttle control. And it always, to me, looked like, again, he just had more whenever he needed it than everyone else. That first moto, Glenn Kohlenhoff rode really well. You couldn't really fault anything he did, but still, Tim was able to find a way by, take the lead and pull away. And even in his interviews, he never looked like he was really exerting himself. He looked like he had everything under control, both motos, no problem. And for me, in the second one, there was a touch of, is he now starting to get into everybody's head because he's so fast this year? And not only so fast, he's not making that many mistakes. And if he does make a mistake, he's the speed to come back from it. The other riders, Jorge Prado, got the start he really, really needed. He stalled. That kind of took out Jeremy Seewer, and Tim went straight to the lead. Then Jeremy had his crash. Brian Bogers crashed immediately after that as well. It's like they're all going, oh no, Tim Gajser's right here. I need to ride the perfect race at my limit, at my best potential to challenge him. We can't let him get away, get any more momentum. And then they're making mistakes and making Tim's life even easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Gajser around that. We'll have to remember that conditions like that, there's probably only one rider in the world that can beat Gajser around there, and even 100% Jeffrey Hurlings might have his hand full around that kind of track. Very slick, hard-packed, technical. It's Gajser's dream track, really. And on getting into the other rider's head, not sure I agree, really. I mean, I don't think Bram Bodgers was too worried about Tim Gajser. He's not in the championship chase to start with. And Sir will probably openly tell you he's not in the championship chase now either. It's really only down to Gajser and Prado at the moment. So your point might be valid for Prado, but not necessarily the other two. But Prado, even though he's had 5 podiums, and if you'd have said at the start of the year, 5 podiums from 5, that's a good start to the season. I mentioned in our last pod he needs to try and keep the points at around 20, and it's after him going 3-4 and Gajser going 1-1 at the weekend, it's already up to 33 points. So things could quickly unravel in that respect in the championship. So Prado's going to have to come out swinging in Latvia and try and go 1-1 there, I think, or else this could get away very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's already at 33 points, isn't it? And it's only 5 rounds in. And as you said, Prado has been on the podium, which usually you need to be on the podium every week to be in close contention for the title. But Tim's riding so well. We've said it before, and he didn't even have a bad moto this weekend. His bad motos aren't that bad, and his good motos he's kind of unbeatable. And everyone else is having little problems here and there. Renault shown he can win races. Prado shown he can win races. And I think not just in terms of the championship, but in terms of just trying to win a race for Brian Bogers, Jeremy Seewer, those guys, whenever they see Tim in front of them, they know they're just going to really have to be perfect at their maximum level. and maybe that's what's making them make those mistakes. Although, talking of Jeremy Seewer, that triple that he did in the second moto, jumping almost over Jorge Prado's head, I actually thought his throttle had stuck and he was about to have an absolutely massive crash. And he just landed on the downside and rode on. So I was thinking a lot more scared than he was for that one. But pretty incredible coming out up that hill.
Yeah, if there's a Balls of Steel award this year, he gets it because, I mean, I think he cased it in the second lap, and then after that, he didn't do it every lap. But, you know, whenever he got a clean run, he still did it. So big balls required for that one. And I don't blame the other riders for not doing it. But fair play to him.
At no point did anyone ever think, oh, that's a good idea. Jeremy just kept hucking it. And it actually gained him a wee bit of time each lap, especially trying to keep with Gajser and then trying to keep Renault behind him. And Renault actually rode maybe second best overall. But it would have been interesting if he'd got the good starts and Tim Gajser had got the bad starts, because that's the other thing about Gajser this year. The starts are really strong as well, and it's only the odd moto he's maybe starting fifth as a bad start. But Renault, he always seems to be generally starting behind Tim, and especially on a track like that, you're not going to have a hope of catching him, even if you're Maxime Renault and actually riding really well, which was good to see, especially after Portugal. So thankfully that looks to be just a little bit of a blip, and he's back on form now.
Absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, especially at a track like that. For any of them other guys to win, you know, it's going to take a really bad start for Gajser or for Gajser to make the mistakes. But unfortunately for them, Gajser had the good starts and he rode really, really well. And at a track like that, even if Maxime Renault is on it, it's going to be very, very difficult to beat Gajser. But, you know, he's an MXGP rookie, is Renault, and, you know, he'll get stronger and stronger. And in a couple of years' time, he could be the way Gajser is now if he keeps developing and riding the way he has been. He's had a really good start this season. Third as an MXGP rookie, another podium. So he's doing really, really good things. And for him, it's all about just growing this season. And already a fantastic start to the season. And Factory Yamaha and Renault, it looks like they've made the right decision. It has to be said.
Yeah, and for Yamaha, Renault obviously back to his form again this weekend. But Jeremy Seewer, we've mentioned, he's obviously feeling confident doing jumps like that. He was doing all he could to stay with Tim Gajser as well in that second moto, and Glenn Coldenhoff mentioned that first moto was really, really good. Unfortunately for Glenn, a bad start and then a fall in race 2 kind of ruined his chances of a podium. But those three Yamaha riders all performing really well at the minute. Generally, again this week in Arco, there are 3 in the top 5.
And in the championship.
Yeah, and the championship. So there's a certain separation there, although Brian Boger's with missing that round. He would probably be in that top 6 category. But sixth overall for him. But again, he showed strong speed too. So I think he's pushing that top 5 definitely at the minute. But if you're Yamaha, you have to be very pleased, because even Jorge Prado struggling to match Tim Gajser at the minute. So that's everyone's challenge, obviously. But Tim just keeps raising the level, and for what Yamaha have, they probably couldn't ask for too much better, especially with the form of Renault. If you count as a title contender, you would probably say Prado, Gajser, obviously, and maybe Renault is that third guy. So certainly for a rookie, and to have Jeremy Seewer and Glenn Coldenhoff up front now more consistently, it couldn't go too much better for Yamaha. And they put a lot of investment, a lot of effort in. It's nice to see that all paying off for them.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. You know, it's between Gajser and Prado, and then after that, Renault's the next best at the moment. And obviously, Seewer had that big crash in Argentina with Olsen. He's still not 100% right off that, although you wouldn't think it with riding triples like that. But yeah, he's still on the mend, let's say. And Coldenhoff, it was actually nice to see him at the front and staying at the front. His starts have generally been good this year, but after 20 minutes, he was struggling with arm pump and dropping back. So it was nice to see him at the front in that first moto and stay there and come home in a very good second. Fortunately, couldn't follow that up with, I think it was a bad start. Can't remember now if he went down or not. Well. Yeah. And then he had technical issues with the bike. So bit of a bummer second moto, but now he'll be looking for 2 consistent top 3 or top 4 results in Latvia, and that's a track that should suit him as well. So yeah, as far as Yamaha are concerned, 3 riders in the top 5. I know they really want an MXGP title, but for all 3 of them to be that consistent is pretty impressive. And just on Bodgers, he's actually 6th in the championship despite missing a round. Yeah. So if he hadn't made that round, he probably would be fifth instead of Codenhoff. But the way Bodgers is riding is really, really good, and he'll just want to keep the ball rolling now, really. I think he was a wee bit unlucky in that first moto, but the second moto, he was really going well at the end, and actually catching Prado another couple of laps would have been very interesting.
Yeah, the battles for that second through sixth was pretty entertaining, especially that second moto. It was just nip and tuck, and while it was hard to pass, a wee bit like Portugal, it wasn't impossible. You had to work at it. You had to use your brain, look for lines, and take advantage of maybe a mistake from someone else, or set it up after maybe two or three corners, rehearse that pass. But it was possible. It just wasn't easy. We saw a few guys come through the field. Mikhail Harop in MX2 was one. But in MXGP, they were all that close, and that group generally is quite close in pace. It was very hard to pass, but Renault was able to find a way past Seewer, and Brian Bogert was actually riding really well as well. But again, the level's still high. It's maybe nobody's on the level of Tim Gajser consistently, but whenever you have 4 or 5 riders really, really close on a track like that, it's definitely still very much entertaining in terms of watching the races anyway. And it looks like it's pretty intense battles whenever you're riding too.
Absolutely. And one rider I think we'll have to mention is Albi Ferrato in that second moto.
Oh,
wow. Obviously, he threw it away a little bit, but in terms of speed, that was probably the best he's ever raced. I mean, he was in 5th, and it looked at one stage he could have finished 2nd. He was all over Prado. And you know what? I think he would have made a move. And those two Yamahas weren't. Anyway. Yeah, exactly. And those two Yamahas are right there as well. He was riding really, really well. Unfortunately, he threw it away. But you know what? That should give him a lot of confidence. And a very underrated rider, actually. He doesn't often see the front at the start, but he's able to work his way through. And for him to be sitting 9th in the championship in MXGP, having a great season. And if he can keep riding like that, I think we could see him in the top 5 more often as the season continues.
And the starts aren't too bad. He's kind of on the back end of all the good guys at times. And for one lap in Arco, he was the fastest man on the planet. He was actually going quicker than Tim Gajser with Jorge Prado in front of him. And you could visibly see the speed, the momentum he was carrying around the corners. He made the track look smoother. And I know he's a bigger guy, but he actually looked really light on the bike, the way he was riding. He was super impressive, and it was such a shame he fell. I think Prado actually hurt his momentum a wee bit. He wasn't able to pass Jorge straight away when he caught up to him. And he was maybe fighting and thinking about how he could pass him. But whenever he had that gap and he was closing Jorge, he was able to do all his own lines, and the flow he had around the track was pretty sensational. It's almost a pity he didn't get away. That he'll probably be always wishing that for a lot of his career, unless he ends up on a full factory team. But if he could have got away in that top 3, it would have been really exciting, especially for the home crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to mention that the crowd were unbelievable, cheering him on too. So maybe that with the crowd behind him, maybe he did ride above his limit a little bit, but you can't take that away from him. His speed was unbelievable. I think you're right. Once he caught up to the back of Prado did respond a little the next lap, but then the lap after that, Ferrado was right on his case again. So I do think he was that little bit quicker than Prado, just to see him, he threw it away. But great to see nonetheless, and one to definitely keep an eye on. He's got a very bright future. As Paul Mallon said, he's still young enough to be racing the MX2 World Championship, so big potential there.
I think that's what a lot of people forget, because he wasn't a front runner as such in MX2, which was generally down to the very bad starts. The ability and the speed was there, but he was never able to show his potential. On the big bike he is. Obviously, he's a bigger guy, and the 450 is able to pull him out of the gate better, but he also has the talent to go around the track fast. I think we're really starting to see that. And he's a bit of a character as well. So the further he stays up at the front, I think that will actually help the sport too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody would have been cheering him on. And Steve Mathis from Pop MX loves him. So hopefully Ferrado can get a wee sneaky MXGP moto win, and it might actually get coverage in America then. Who knows? Watch his space.
Yeah, he could be the guy. Just on Jorge Prado, quite a curious first couple of motos. In fact, all 3, I suppose you could say. His qualifying wasn't great, but he got a decent start in the heat race. But then for the first 5 or 10 minutes, he couldn't go with the front 2. And then he started to find his groove, and he was on that pace. And the first moto was very, very similar. First 5 or 10 minutes, he wasn't quite there, dropping off a wee bit. And then he had the gap kind of 4 seconds 4.5, 3.5 seconds, he started making up a bit of time. It just took him too long to get into that pace. He ended up finding the pace generally, but he couldn't then get around Glenn Koolhof. He'd almost left it too late before he found that rhythm. And you can't, obviously, with Tim Gajser going fast straight away, you can't really afford to take 5 or 10 minutes to find whether it's lines. It looked like he was adjusting lines at times in certain corners, going wide, and then he started going inside, and that seemed to be working better for him. But then the second moto on the Sunday, again, while he's actually said he felt good that he was going to have the pace that moto, he made the mistake. So all 3 motos, well, the third one obviously a slightly different way with the stall, but the start of each moto kind of killed Prado in terms of the raw pace and setting himself up to even give Gajser some sort of challenge. And yet he seemed to have the pace at certain other parts in the race. We were curious.
Yeah, I mean, he rode well in patches, but like you say, the start of the race wasn't great, but you could also argue the end of the second moto wasn't great either, with Bodgers catching him and Ferrado catching him. He kind of got away with one there, but what I would say is it's not a disgrace, that he couldn't beat Gajser around there. We'll have to make that clear. That's Gajser's track. But what I would say is Prado needed to go 2-2 this weekend. That's the main bit.
The 3/4 just wasn't. Third and fourth just ideal.
Exactly. I mean, I think it was it 19 points, and now it's went up to 33. So he can't really afford this, and now it means he needs to come out and probably gain points in Latvia. Obviously, Latvia is more Prado's track, so I think he'll be looking forward to that. But yeah, as you say, he knows in this first moto now he needs to go out and win, and if he doesn't, he's going to be disappointed because that's going to be more points dropped. And if he doesn't beat Gajser in any of the motos, we could be looking at 40 points plus. So it's going to be really intriguing in Latvia.
What's interesting as well is Prado, you would think with his good starts, he would maybe then want to start beside Gajser and try and cut Gajser off to try and maximize every advantage, put Gajser deeper in the pack, and he gets the whole shot. That's in theory. But in reality, Tim's starts are so good, that's not even necessarily that possible at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Gajser's starts have been on point this season too. I think it looks like something he's went away and worked on as well.
He has,
And yeah, it's a difficult one because generally, even if Prado is getting the whole shot, like you say, Gajser's coming out top 3 or top 5, and Gajser this year isn't panicking. Even if he starts 5th or whatever, he's taking his time, biding the riders off, and his confidence must be pretty sky high now because he's passed these guys a lot this year, and that does the confidence a world of good. So it's going to need a big ride to beat him at the minute and try and claw back these championship points from Prado, but hope for the championship's sake he can do it. But if Gajser does something like Gertz does, that would really shake the championship up.
I think that's what, from the rival's point of view, you're going to have to start trying to take Gajser in the place that he isn't comfortable, rattle him some way or some other way, make contact, cut him off the start, try and do something to get him out of this rhythm, because as you say at the minute, whether he starts 5th, 6th, or 1st, he seems to have control at all times. Again, with Glenn Coldenhoff, a wee bit like Portugal, he took his time to make that pass, and then he did make the pass, and then it was all over, and the writing was kind of on the wall as soon as he made the move. For Prado or Renault or whoever it is, they're probably going to have to take a risk to try and force Tim into going a pace he isn't comfortable with. But the problem is now he's already got a 33-point lead. If he's not comfortable, he can almost afford to lose 3 points to Prado. It's
exactly
it's not going to be easy for Prado to claw this back, barring he goes to his elite potential and starts putting on a few wins, or Tim somehow makes a mistake some road, or what Latvia is like, it's quite easy to go down in the first turn there. It's quite a tight corner, something like that on a mechanical, which you wouldn't wish to happen. But if you're these other riders trying to go for a world championship, that's maybe something you're starting to look towards, unless you can just find some raw pace to beat Tim straight up.
Yeah, exactly. Like you say, I mean, if Prado does ride on the edge and take Gajser to a place he doesn't really want to go to, at the moment, Gajser can just take a second. If it's only the one moto or whatever, like you say, it's going to come down to a Gajser crash or a first corner pile up or something like that, and he needs to open the door for these others to get back in. Kind of happened last year whenever Hurlings wasn't riding at Lockett, and he had that crash. Something like that.
Crash, wasn't it?
Something like that needs to happen to let Prado back in a field. So, but Gajser's mentally in a good place right now, so I don't see him panicking.
No,
just yet. But it might take Prado needing to win 2 or 3 motos in a row to make him do something like that, or for a Gajser, but at the minute it doesn't really look like happening. He's riding unbelievably well, it has to be said, and I do think he has stepped it up from last year.
Yeah, sometimes I go back and forth. Has Tim stepped it up, or is it just because Prado's maybe not at the level he was at times last year? There's obviously no Roman Febvre, and we know Roman excels in tracks like Arco as well. There's no Antonio Caroli, and there's also no world champion in Jeffrey Hurlings, who does have the pace, you would think, to really push Tim Gajser, the one guy that does kind of week to week, no matter what the track is. But I think, as well as you said there, I think Tim has improved as well, regardless of what the level was so high last year. His starts, for one, look more consistent, but his poise and the speed that he seems to have in reserve is there. And that's almost why it's so disappointing that Jeffrey's injured, because it could have been some great battles. We talked about that a wee bit last week. Just on Hurlings, I think he's approaching a schedule to come back on the bikes, what you've been hearing. But again, if he's going to make the MN Nationals, it's going to be quite tight.
Yeah, well, the latest word I have is he'll not be on the bike for at least the next 2 weeks. And then I think he's going to go to the doctor and try and get the green light. But, at the moment, it's at least 2 weeks. To make the AMA opener, he's probably going to have to be on the bike in 2 weeks' time. Yeah, and that remains to be seen if that will actually happen. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he could maybe get away with 3 weeks, but you don't really want to be in a situation where he's rushing it and he's just coming back for the sake of it. He's came back from injuries before, especially in his rookie MXGP season, and look how that went. Well, so yeah. I hope he doesn't rush it just to be behind that starting gate. And if he's going to go over, I hope it's with 3 or 4 weeks on the bike, and I hope it's him feeling good that he can believe he can turn up and win, because otherwise it would be a bit of a shame. I do still think he'll probably try and make Raiola GP, and then depend on if he makes it there, see how he feels there, and if he feels good, then he'll probably make the decision to go to AMA. But I'm sure there will be plenty of rumours within the next couple of weeks. I do think there'll be a press release possibly out next week, or the end of this week, stating a return to racing, but it's not going to say which championships he's committed to just yet.
And the issue for racing in America for Jeffrey, he won't have much bike time. Even if he does make it, he'll have a maximum of 4 weeks on the bike. It's a 1 day format, so you're not going to have the Saturday to bed yourself in. He's going to have to learn every track in about 10 minutes. And then he's going to be expected to be riding close to his best potential to try and take on Tomac, Ferrandis, Cianciarulo, Sexton, Caroli, probably, Roxon, etc. The MF feels quite weak at the minute because of all the injuries, but usually by the first round of the outdoors, everybody that's missing is back. And whenever you don't have the experience of the tracks, he doesn't have the experience on this new bike either. There's a lot of things going against him, even if he does turn up in the first round. So it'll be very interesting if he does race, where he even places, because there's so much that he isn't used to, including this bike, that it's not going to be an ideal scenario if he does race. But if he sees himself as a chance of winning the championship, I guess you're going to do it, because the MXGP, unfortunately, is already out the window.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you touched on there, he's going to be developing a bike, and he's going to be developing on a bike on tracks that he's not usually used to racing either. In America, the tracks are very, very fast, don't get quite as rough and bumpy. So it's going to be interesting if he does make it. But like I say, probably we'll know more in a couple of weeks' time if he does get this green light from the doctor. And if he is back on the bike in 2 weeks, knowing Jeffrey Hurlings, he'll probably be there.
Yeah, he's very determined. And again, it does give him a bit more purpose to his season. If he can race an MN National Championship and try and get average win record in GPs, it will be a successful year. And then obviously you have the Motocross of Nations at Red Bull, so there's plenty of motivation there for him, as bad as this season has started. But back to Arco and Jeremy Van Horbeck, 7th overall, but quite quiet in terms of his racing. He was never quite up in that kind of front pack battle, but obviously very fast again for Jeremy Van Horbeck. Brilliant for Beta, and he's having an absolutely fantastic season. And then also quiet, surprisingly quiet, was Ruben Fernandez, but it netted him 8th overall. And I think after the spectacular crashes of the 2 weeks previous, he'd probably be quite happy just to have a relatively calm day, a top 10 and build on what's been a good start to the season, but he's had to deal with a few bumps and bruises along the way too.
Yeah, well, it was another Saturday disaster for Ruben, wasn't it? Pretty
That's
sure
right,
he had
yes.
a pretty big crash. So it's the Saturdays he needs to worry about, not the Sundays.
And
'Cause
that's killing his
yeah,
start for the Sunday. So it's like just a general
yeah.
all around
But
frustration.
yeah, it does show he's able to learn though. If
Mhm.
whenever the Saturdays go bad, he's able to set himself out and sort himself for the Sunday. So hopefully the next GP he can get through both days, and if he can, he should be towards the front. He's definitely riding very well. 8th in MXGP as a rookie is certainly encouraging, and 7th in that second moto is very, very good. I still think he's sore, like you say, from
Yeah, he's got
Portugal. So this weekend off will probably do him the world of good.
He just looks really good on the bike. He looks comfortable on the bike, aggressive, and the Honda just seems to fit him really well. And there's nothing really there that looks uncomfortable except when he's on the ground and in pain. But generally, as I said last week, the pace is there. It's kind of just putting it all together. But this is what his rookie season's for. He sort of got the hard bit down with the pace, and now he's just working out these heat races to get himself in good gate pick position for Sundays, and then we really could see Ruben Fernandez mixing up at the very front. Staying with Honda and Mitch Evans, I think he was probably one of the biggest, most positive stories of the whole weekend. A fantastic race on Saturday, led a lot of the race, and then he backed that up on the Sunday. Not as spectacular, perhaps. Didn't always get the starts he wanted, but again, consistent, fast, and 9th overall. And for what he's been through to lead a moto again at this level, he's got to be really, really pleased with himself as he looks back on his weekend today, Monday.
Absolutely. It was fantastic to see him, lead a race again. I know it's only qualifying, but this guy's been through a lot, and he was told he might never ride a bike again. For him to be at this Haas level to win a qualifying race, you were sort of cheering him on to get the job done.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he couldn't hold off his super fast teammate, but all the same, it was great to see that. And now he knows he has the speed now. What he needs is just races under his belt. I think he still gets a little bit tired maybe after 20 or 25 minutes, which is completely understandable. But, he knows he has the speed, so it's all about races for Mitch. And the more races, he'll be able to last the speed longer. So, I mean, before the start of the season, I'm not sure if I would have said he'll have 2 top 10 motos by round 5. So,
And
very,
run up
very
front,
encouraging.
lead races.
Exactly.
And for Mitch, you wonder if this is matching his expectations or exceeding his expectations, because even in the heat race when he was leading, he was battling with Prado and Tim. He didn't make it easy for either of them, but yet he looked so smooth doing it. So I remember Gordon Crocker telling me a couple of years ago, even when Mitch was in the MX2 class, the thing that impressed him the most was that he was riding with a margin of error. He wasn't on the edge. And even now, despite the year off and getting the whole shot and running with the best guys in the world at the front with that pressure, he still didn't look rushed. He still looked calm and composed and never really looked like he was on the edge. So I think that's another positive as well, that he was able to run that pace without being on the edge. And obviously, yes, fitness and experience from having that year off will all come into it. But I think he's still riding with a brace on his wrist as well. So he's come through a lot, and to be able to have that poise still at the front of the pack and to putting in these results, very, very impressive. And as you mentioned, it's come a lot quicker than I certainly expected it to come this season.
Absolutely, really, really encouraging signs. And as you say, he's very calculated on the bike. He's got a good style, nice to watch. I wasn't sure about some of his line choices, though, having said that, but still, he rode really, really well. 2nd in the qualifying race and backed that up with a 10th and a 9th. Very, very solid day. And now hopefully he can keep pounding out top 10 results and get close to that top 5. It's certainly not out of the question. He just needs races under his belt.
Yeah, and I've seen with the Hondas, they're starting well too, so that's probably going to help. The more confidence he gets, the better starts get. That's generally how it works as well. So it looks like Evans is still going to keep that upward curve. 10th overall for Jorge Zaragoza, and generally this season he's maybe went under the radar, but he's certainly upped his level from last year. Some very good rides. 10th overall, yes. Although Jordy, to be fair, is good in sand and hard pack. You would think with the French, the hard pack would suit him, but he's actually a good sand rider too. He's been generally consistent this year, bar the odd moto here and there. 10th overall, privateer, don't forget, running his own team. That's probably as kind of in terms of goals coming into the year, top 10 is probably where you're looking to be on a really good day, and he's achieving that.
Absolutely. He's actually sneaky good this year, I would say. He's certainly impressed me in quite a lot of the motos. 10th overall, 12th and 10th. It's not easy in MXGP being a privateer, so very, very good day. And like you say, he'll just want to try and keep those kind of results up. 15th in the championship, if he can try and close the gap down to the top 10, I think he'd be over the moon. It has been a few difficult years for Jordy since ever getting up the MXGP class, actually. So it'd be nice just to see him, be consistent in the top 10 this year. And who knows, with another strong off season behind him and a full season this year, who knows what he might do next year.
Great, well made. Ben Watson, the best. Well, it didn't start off amazingly for him, but he had a crash in the first moto, I think it was. But he said his feeling on the bike was good, and he certainly showed that in race 2. He got the start. Finally, he got to see the front of the pack, probably for the first time since Hawkstone Park, where he showed good pace. But ever since then, the pace hasn't been quite there. And if the pace has been there, the starts haven't been there, or he's had a crash and he hasn't been feeling 100%. It's been one thing after another for Ben Watson. And a 6th place in Moto 2, where he ran the pace. He was right behind Jorge Prado for a while. And then Brian Bogers was on the charge and put him down a spot. But all in all, for Ben Watson, his best Grand Prix of the year, and a 6th has to do wonders for his confidence as well, because he saw that he had the pace and he didn't look like he was out of control or uncomfortable going that pace either.
Yeah, very interestingly, he stayed in the press release in between motos. He changed to the scoop tire for the rip start straight, and that made the difference because he was able to get the start. And there's so many good riders in MXGP. If you're able to get the start and see what the riders are doing in front of you, they're good enough to be able to copy. So getting a good start was key. He was able to do that. And in the end, he was actually quite comfortable in 6th. So really good, positive step in the right direction. He showed by that moto why he got this factory ride. So hopefully he can maintain that kind of riding now and just improve now. Fingers crossed.
Tom Cock, again, very, very strong ride. 12th overall for him, just ahead of Calvin Villandrin. 13th overall, but that was because, unfortunately, he had a massive crash in the second race. But until then, Villandrin was riding really, really fast. He was on that pace of that top 6. He was in that battle. And again, he's not on a full factory bike, but that Gavin van Venro Yamaha looks like he's really got it dialed in. He's looking really comfortable, and every time he gets the start at the minute, he's going the pace of the sort of elite level riders.
Yeah, Tom Koch is really going under the radar this year in some GPs. Maybe he hasn't been consistent, but he's had a couple of really good GPs, and 13-12 in that class is very, very impressive in the Cossack KTM. So fair play to the German. And on Vlaanderen, it is a pity because he had 2 consistent motos in Portugal, and it looked like he was going to have another two consistent motos here in Arco. Just a shame about that crash and resulting in a DNF, but he can certainly be happy with his pace. And while he doesn't have a factory bike, he is running a Story Yamaha engine this year, which is quite interesting. It seems to be certainly a lot better than the equipment they had last year, and probably why we're seeing him at the front more. I still do feel he isn't great out of the gate. I would love to see what he could do if he can get a top 5 start. That would be very interesting, I think.
Because even when he is getting a good start, you would say for him, it's at the back of that top 6, 7, 8. He's with them, but he's almost having to work his way through them at times. And with the pace he has, that's good for him to say that he can run it. But at some point, he's going to want to get right up there at the front, get up away with Tim Gajser, away with Jorge Prado, and then really test himself and really see if he has that pace at the very front to challenge for podiums. But it looks like he could well do it. Exactly.
He's having to pass a lot of riders every week because, like you say, I'd say he's probably starting at around 10th every week, and he's generally moving forward. So his pace is good. Like you say, it would just be good to see him get out in that top 5 and see him mix. He could certainly rustle a few feathers at the front, I think, because he has pace. That's for sure.
Just an update on that crash. It was pretty scary, kind of landing on his head and neck. But he actually just said on Instagram, he's just a few bumps and bruises. So nothing major. So really lucky in one sense for Calvin that it didn't go worse, because we've seen before, just when he's really getting his form a wee bit last year, then he had a crash that took him out of proceedings. And Colt Nichols actually replied, said he's glad he's all good and that he looked awesome on the bike. So there's your Star Racing Yamaha connection. Good to see the Americans following MXGP. But yeah, updating Calvin Villandrin. He's not badly injured, just some bumps and bruises. And for anyone that's seen the crash, that's pretty lucky, because for a minute or two, it didn't look good for him there. It was pretty scary.
Yeah, it was a big one. I think Gert's done the exact same thing, didn't it? They were both riders who crashed there. I think both hit neutral, I think, and went over the bar. So thankfully they've both got away lucky and no major injuries. But a DNF isn't great, but it certainly could have been a lot worse. That's for sure.
Just before we talk Iago Gertz and MX2, Jorge Zaragoza, I remember him, it must be over 10 years ago now. I was actually at a race in Italy, maybe 2011, and he was one
Suzuki
of the next.
days?
Yeah, he was factory 125 Suzuki, and he actually broke his wrist or his arm that day. But he was one of the highly touted riders that was going to come through and become one of the big names in the future, and injuries and different things that never quite happened for him. But it's nice to see him doing some MXGPs and scoring some points, actually, because still a talented rider to be going top 20, but sometimes it shows you it's not that easy to take every step to get to the factory rides and at the MXGP level. And for Jorge Zaragoza, he was one of those hotly tipped kids, we bit like Brian Sue, and it never quite happened for him, but it's nice to see him still racing and still riding at a high level, able to get points at the what I would say is the toughest class in the world.
Absolutely. I remember Zaragoza well. I think he started off at Bald, then went to Suzuki, then ended up at HRC Honda with Garibaldi.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very talented, but like you say, injuries. And I think actually he missed the start of this season with injury, so that's why he's just back now in MXGP. I think he'll race all the European rounds now, so hopefully he can stay fit and just learn in the class on his KMP Honda. But yeah, it's nice to see him back in the paddock.
Right, MX2 and Tom Vialle won both motos. If you didn't watch the motos, you would think he dominated, but in reality, he had a lot of pressure. And when you're leading a race and somebody's right behind you, that's not the most comfortable place to be. Generally, it almost at a point gets annoying. You just want them to go away and have a bit of a rest, as it were, mentally. But Vialle never got that. And what was impressive with him, he's made some mistakes this year, but when it really mattered, he didn't make any. Mikhail Harop, who is in the form of his life, was all over him at times, wouldn't let him get away whatsoever. Even if Harop made a bad line to try and look for a pass or made a mistake, he was able to close the gap back on Tom. But Tom held strong, didn't make any mistakes, and it was very similar second moto with Kai de Wolf all over him as well until maybe the last two laps. And ironically, that was when Tom made a slight mistake, but Kai had already made a mistake earlier on in that lap, so wasn't in a position to points. And from there, it was all over. And adding to Tom Vialle, what turned out to be a dream day. 2 moto wins under pressure, no mistakes. But the mistakes came from Iago Gertz, unfortunately, and a bit of a throwback to his previous seasons in MX2 after looking so strong and mistake-free generally this year. Iago, for me, actually looked like the fastest rider on the track at times, especially that first moto. But it all went wrong with 2 crashes. First of all, he didn't get the start he needed. He had to make moves again, trying to pass Benetton, and you're wondering, would Kimi Yamaha thinking they maybe should have got Benetton to let Gertz pass in that situation, because whether he got frustrated or not, made that one mistake, which wasn't too bad, but the second one was the killer. As you say, on that, I think it's a step down, drop off. He went down hard, seemed to wreck the bike, and ultimately he was that far back, he ended up pulling in because he wasn't going to get any points. And now he doesn't lead the championship after only 2 or 3 weeks ago. He was the one that had the lead, and it was Vialle that was in 4th in the championship, but things have turned around quickly, almost just because of a couple of bad starts and that costly DNF in the second moto. Things turned very fast, unfortunately, for Iago Gertz in the wrong direction.
Well, firstly, just on Tom Vialle, he's a determined bugger, isn't he? I don't think he was the quickest. I don't think he was the quickest all weekend, to tell you the truth, but that doesn't matter. I mean, he went 1-1 and held off a lot of pressure, especially in that first moto from Harop. Just couldn't get around him, and Vialle's so determined. And, you know, he put himself in a good position this weekend, getting a decent gate pick, then going 1-1. You know, that's what it's all about. Positioning yourself well, and he was able to do that and stay out of trouble. You know, at worst, Vialle probably would have been 2-2 this weekend because the first laps went well for him. Whereas, you know, with that first corner, if you're not in the top 10 in qualifying, it's very, very difficult. So Gertz put himself in a very, very bad situation with that gate pick. His starts weren't good, and we've seen the result in that second moto. You get a little bit frustrated, and then crashes follow. It's just a big shame from his perspective that the bike was damaged and it meant a DNF. Bit of a shame, especially after the first moto. He'd actually rode well to come up to 3rd, and in that first moto, in that first lap on the second moto, I'm not sure I've ever seen Gertz ride like that on the first lap before. I think he came from 10th to 5th or 10th to 4th in behind his teammate. And, Gertz is one of these riders who usually likes to bet himself into motos, but that first lap intensity was very, very impressive. It's been a while since I've seen that from him. So speed certainly doesn't need to worry about. Just a pity about the 2 crashes and then the bike issue, but 14 points in this championship. We're now heading to a sandy track, which should suit Gertz. He'll be looking to do 1-1 there, but as we've seen, Vialle's unbelievably determined, so he's not going to make anything easy.
And losing 30 points on the day is a bit of a nightmare. Kyle de Wolf, he's going to be good next in 2 weeks in the sand in Latvia. But let's talk about, he actually rode really well, second overall for him. Nice to see him come back. He was decent last week, but this week, especially that second moto, we really saw him come back to his full potential. So Vialle, he'll always got the red plate. He's going to have a revengeful Gertz chomping at his heels in Latvia. And I think Kyle de Wolf's really going to start to show his true speed again now that he's got over that crash from Argentina. But Mikhail Harop, let's talk about him. Form of his life, as I said, and he was so close to taking that win. I think if he'd got past Tom, I think he would have won that moto, because it looked like he actually had the pace maybe to gap him a wee bit, although Tom Vialle's that smart, he might have just followed a couple of lines and put the pressure back on. But certainly Mikhail Harop, maybe the best moto of his career.
First one or the second one?
First one. Well, the second one we'll get on to.
The second one wasn't bad either.
Well, the first one, because he was so close to winning, and he probably had the pace to get the win.
Yeah, true. Although it did kind of remind me of one of the motos in Portugal where he was all over Vialle. He just couldn't make the pass. Although in that moto he was ahead to start with. Vialle actually passed him. But yeah, he was unbelievable, the speed he was carrying in that first moto.
He believed he could win for the first time in his career. He was, this is my time to win. It just couldn't quite get the pass.
Yeah, probably. I think you're right. He's got used to the podium now, and why he wants to go out there and win. And the corner speed he was carrying was pretty outrageous. And like you say, anytime he did make a mistake or maybe went offline, used a different line to try and pass, he was able to catch no problem. It was just a shame for him. It was such a hard track to pass, but I don't think he can be disappointed with his riding. Unbelievable. And if he can keep this up, you would think a win shouldn't be too far away around the corner, you would think. It
was actually a shame in one respect that he got that bad start in race 2, because if he'd got away at the front, you'd have thought he was definitely in contention for the overall win. He made life very hard for himself, started just outside the top 10. His GoPro's actually pretty entertaining to watch. It shows how brilliant but also tricky the track was as well. But Harop made a move, and eventually got onto the back of Rick Elzinga, who had a great GP debut himself. But Harop, interestingly, didn't know that point would have got him on the podium. So he was actually going pretty hard just for the sake of 1 point, which is how he's seen it. So certainly no issue there, and sort of hunger and determination. But it worked out well for him. It would have been not so good if he'd went down trying to make the pass, but he got the job done. Third on the podium with a last lap move on Elzinga. It shows how confident he is too, that he was able to come through the field like that. And 3 podiums in a row. As you say, a win might not be too far away if he can keep this speed up, but also just improve those starts so he can get 2 in a row of the level he did in the first moto.
Absolutely. What I would say is, after he got himself into 7th, he was 10 seconds behind Elzinga with, I think, 4 laps to go.
That was some.
If he had just settled for 7th, which a lot of riders might have done, I think he would have been raging with the team. I'm not quite sure why they didn't pit board him, or maybe they did and he was just that much in the zone that he didn't read his pit boards. That's possible. But if the team didn't pit board him, then he needed 1 spot and he didn't take the risk, he would have been fuming. But thankfully that never happened, and he went on a complete charge, and he caught 10 seconds in a 2.5, 3 laps, and Elzinga wasn't hanging about. And that lap where he set the quickest lap of the race, unbelievable speed. So he's really on a good roll at the minute, and hopefully for him this can continue. When he was 16, he was hyped as this next big thing, which he was at the time, but injuries haven't been kind to him. Even though last year the results might not have been what him or his F&H Kawasaki team wanted, I think last year it was just important for him to stay injury free and build. He was able to do that. So hopefully now I can stay injury-free again and he can be a consistent front runner. Certainly nothing wrong with the speed. And Steve Dixon, I think, will be a very happy man after getting over those nerves from Moto 1.
Yeah, and Harop's kind of taken Steve back to having Zach Osborne and Arno Tonis level riders. I think, which is nice to see. It's been a while since he's really had a rider at the very, very front. He's had some good riders. Thought Wilson Todd actually rode well last year. Darren Sinai's had some good performances too, but Mikhail Harop's running at a pace where he can win motos right now, and that's 3 weeks in a row on different tracks he's been able to produce.
Yeah, and that's another thing. That wouldn't necessarily be a Mikhail Harop track, in my opinion, but it's at the minute he's very versatile. And I think it just shows how comfortable he is on the bike and how much he's enjoying that bike. So great to see, and it's nice to see Dixon, like you say, have a top rider again. I would probably say I always thought Bulgakov was a good signing, but he would near remind you of Harop. 2 years ago, he kept getting little injuries, and that was probably why he only got the 1 podium for Dixon. But hard to believe, actually, he's had to wait this long to get a podium with a rider, and now he's got 3 in a row, so he must be buzzing. Now he wants to win, probably.
Like buses. Thibaut Benistant just missed that podium because Mikhail Harop took it off him on the last lap. But really good weekend for him. Only a second race back after injury. Won the qualifier. Going away, actually, was unchallenged. It looked like he was on a parade lap. His gear wasn't even dirty or anything. Completely clean. 2 strong motos again in the points pen races on the Sunday, 4th overall. He'll probably be slightly disappointed that he lost that 3rd, but there wasn't much he could really do about it. It was just down to Harop's speed, as we mentioned earlier. So it's nice to see him back, and almost a reminder of what we've been missing the start of the year, because Benisson's one of those guys, if you're coming, shows you how much talent he has to come straight off an injury and to go pretty much on podium pace and win a heat race straight away. He actually beat his EMX rival from a couple of years ago, Mattia Guadagnini, overall. But Guadagnini, again, he didn't get the starts, but he's starting to show the pace. But I don't think he'll be too happy that Beniston's missed the first 3 rounds, come back in and has beat him overall already. Yeah,
just on Beniston, what a style. It's great to see him back. Really, really nice to watch. But it's his mentality as well. You know, it's only his 2nd GP back. A lot of riders should be absolutely buzzing to get 4th. And he said in the press release after he's a little bit disappointed not to be in the podium. But to be honest, only his 2nd GP back. I did not expect him to be that quick already. I'm not sure if he was expecting it, but it just goes to show what his mentality's like, that he's only been back 5 minutes and he's already disappointed not to be in the box. So he's certainly one to watch out for. He's got this speed already. Last year, he did not have the Star Yamaha engine. He has that this year. So I think he'll probably be loving that bike as well. So definitely one to keep an eye on with the speed he's showing already. Pretty impressive.
And Kevin Horgano again was fast, just like Harop. These Kawasaki's are really going well this year, even though it's 2 different teams. So that's good for that brand. But again, a mistake. But speed-wise, Horgano was good. And he still managed to get a 6th overall out of it.
Yeah, really good. It's just, he knows what his issue is, trying to keep it in 2 wheels. As soon as he does that, I'm convinced he'll be on that podium. He's probably overdue a podium by now. So Latvia could be a good track for Kevin. So if he can get 2 good starts and keep rule it out, that could be the weekend. But he's certainly a podium shouldn't be too far away.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of guys building to try and get their first race wins, get on this podium, become regular guys at the front, and it's not just going to be Vialle, Gertz, and DeWolf.
Yeah, I have to say MX2 is very, very exciting this year. It really is.
In both motors was really good. You know, at the front it was always close because Vialle was always behind it. You had the Gertz drama coming through the field. You had Harop then coming through the field. There was always something going on wherever you looked. Great, and that track seemed to help things stay pretty close, and riders were always trying to look for this line or that line to try and make the pass, but it was difficult to pass, so it kept everything pretty close generally. Yeah, and it feels like I mean, that's 5 rounds we've done now, and it doesn't feel like anyone's completely dominated a moto yet. Yeah.
I know Lagenfelder went 1-1. Maybe the first moto of the year was the most dominant anyone has been, because it's all been pretty close. Apart from that, I can't remember somebody just pulling the pin at the front and leaving everybody for dead. So it's really close and it's quite unpredictable, so it's really exciting. I'm really enjoying MX2 this year. Yeah,
I thought the Arco, the 2 motos in Arco, even that heat race to see Beniston win, there's always a hint of unpredictability. A couple of riders that if they get to start, what are they going to do?
Yeah, I mean, somebody like Isaac Gifton, if you give him a whole shot, he's capable.
Well, I think Roger DeCoster is going to be very pleased with his signing. He's getting starts, so he's getting the bike up there, which means he's getting the sponsors up there. but he's able to stay up there too. He's a wee bit wild, just at certain moments here and there. You take a sharp intake of breath. Generally speaking, very good, 8th overall. He's not afraid to mix it with the very top guys, and he has the speed to be there as well. And he's consistently getting these results in. If he isn't top 5, he's generally top 10. So I think for a privateer team, that's about all you can ask for. And with gifting, as you say, with these guys going for podiums, he's a guy you can't rely out getting a podium either.
Yeah, I think he just needs to get good starts because he's good enough to follow the guys in front. I mean, he was third and he looked pretty comfortable in third. Obviously, he had Gertz and Adamo behind him, but he doesn't really get flustered. He maybe rides above his limit a little, tiny little bit, and that leads to crashes. But you have to maybe ride on your limit to get your first podium, and then once it happens, maybe that's the monkey off your back. But speed wise, when he gets a start, he's really good. And he would near remind you of Horgano actually, and them two are good friends. If you cut out their crashes, they've got the speed for podiums. There's no doubt about it.
Rick Elzinga, a great Grand Prix debut for him.
Yeah.
7th overall. He was helped with the starts, but he also had good pace. At the end of the motos, you could see him maybe dropping back a wee bit. He didn't quite have the longevity of pace to go with that top 5, 6 or so, but certainly a great confidence booster. Again, Rick Elzinga you associate with sand for obvious reasons, being Dutch, but that track I thought he rode really well. He wasn't intimidated. I think it shows just how good EMX2 is for riders who are in Rick's situation where you're not getting that big ride in MX2. You're able to go into EMX 250, maybe have a couple of injuries, but because you've got the speed, you're hopefully going to get a decent ride, show some good speed, then get a better ride and work your way into MXGP or MX2, with confidence to then really show your full potential in the World Championship. Yeah,
of course. It looks like firstly, Rick Elzinga has had a really strong winter. I think he's riding a better level than he did last year, and he was already pretty fast last year. Yeah, and also Hoot and Metal deserve a lot of credit. They've got a very good team that focuses on the MX 250 Championship. They've also got a really good coach in Herge and Braca, and I think that's really helped Rick. Just interviewing him after Portugal, he started thinking about things he's never really thought about before when it comes to food and diet, and he's putting probably the hardest work he's ever put in now. So, and also he was in a bit of a situation where he can't really, even though he wants to do well in MX2, he still can't really ride above his limit because he's got an MX 250 Championship at stake. So I felt he dealt with that really well actually, and he just rode smooth, and he didn't look out of place. He just looked like he was riding how he would ride at a practice track, which is maybe easier said than done because it's his MX2 debut at the end of the day, and he's going to be, and he doesn't really know where he stands in that class yet. So he's going to be. He had the
starts and the pressure and all the adrenaline up front. It'd be easy to make a mistake, but he didn't.
Exactly. And I'm hoping he gets an MX2 GP ride next year. I'm thinking he would be a pretty good signing for a team like maybe SM Action or FNH Kawasaki potentially. Obviously, that's just me throwing that out there. There's been no rumours of that whatsoever, but I think he'd be a very good signing. Yeah, he's definitely open. Even last year, I thought he was really good, and this year he's went to another level. He's shown what he can do in EMX 250, and now he's showing that for anyone looking to sign him for next year, it looks like he has the stuff to do well in MX2 now. So important to think that these EMX 250 guys are able to do a handful of MX2 races just to find their feet and show teams their level, as well as get that upfront experience in EMX 250. We saw it actually again with Guadagnini and Benetton. They then transferred that momentum into MX2 after their success in EMX 250. So I think that's definitely a really important series to keep. Maybe you could adjust the age, just under 21, under 24, under 25, so they're not exactly the same. But it's certainly not a series that you would do away with, because going from EMX 125 to MX2 is a bit of a mad jump for a lot of riders. You're going to maybe have a Prado that can do it. But for Rick Elzinga, even a Guadagnini, other riders of that ilk, sometimes it can be a wee bit overwhelming, and then they could just drop off and lose a career out of it because they don't have that place to go and mature. Absolutely. Anyone that wants rid of the MX 250 Championship, need their head checked. But anyway, Rick Elzinga is also in for Latvia this weekend, as long as he gets a wild card round. So a track that should suit him more would be very good, I think. Yeah, I think if he gets the start that he got this weekend in Latvia, he could definitely be one to watch out for with the sand you're going. Although with Latvia, sometimes it can be bizarrely hard pack if it's been dry there in the lead up to the event. At other times, it can be a slightly deeper sand.
So you never quite know what you're going to get in Latvia until you get there. But Simon Langenfelder, 10th overall. This was maybe more of last year's Simon Langenfelder, and I feel the momentum's kind of got taken away from him with all those crashes. I don't feel he rode badly, but that extra wee bit that he had in the first 2 or 3 Grand Prix just isn't there right now, and maybe another week off is what he needs just to recover and go again.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, ever since he went 1-1 at Matterley Basin, he's had a lot of bad luck, and it's just all sort of been a domino effect from getting took out by Vialle, and then the crash last week. He hurt his thumb. I don't even think that was a crash. It was, what was it? Was it like a first corner? Can't even remember now, but hurt his thumb from that. So just think he needs a week off and try and rebuild to get back to where he was at the start of the year. A lot of it necessarily hasn't been his fault. So
a lot of the crashes were Vialle was
kind of
one
freaks,
of them. Weird situations with other riders. Just been a domino effect of losing confidence and picking up injuries here and there. That it's a wee bit frustrating for him, I'm sure, because he's probably dreamed of coming into a season on that level of confidence, getting those results and really going on from there. But it's actually, he's kind of regressed a bit. But I think once he gets back to himself and gets some good starts, one good moto can really put him back up to where he was, just like we've seen with Mikhail Harop. He's 1 podium's led to 3 in a row for him.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, I think the weekend off will be quite good for him just to reset and go back to the basics and then come out swinging in Latvia. One rider I would actually like to touch upon is Stephen Robini, quietly having a really, really good season. A consistent 9-9, 9th in the championship. There's a lot of fast riders in this MX2 World Championship. For him to be in the top 10 is really good, I think. And I think he's actually running a standard bike. Obviously, he's got a really good setup, but the run a standard engine in MX2 isn't easy against all the factory and tuned engines. So shout out to Stephen Robini.
And Liam Everts as well. He wasn't actually expected back to until Latvia. He came back with not a lot of prep after his broken finger from that freak first turn crash at Matterley Basin. His first real MX2 round as a full-time MX2 rider, no preparation, coming in off an injury. And he was in and around that top 10, 14th overall, but pace-wise, really, really good, I thought, for Liam Everts, considering the start of the season he's had. I don't think I was expecting him to be quite that competitive straight away on pace. He was right there, battling, ironically, with Jeremy Sido, who was on his bike last week. So I think for Liam, there was maybe a wee bit of pressure there coming in, as well as all the general pressure you have that you don't want to be going much slower than the guy that had your bike for the last couple of weeks. I think he showed he's already back on that pace. And for essentially his first MX2 race, he has to be over the moon with that result under the circumstances.
Absolutely. I did not expect that. I was actually speaking to someone on the team and he only had 1 day back on the bike. And it was a very late decision to race there. So to go 14, 13 and beat a lot of good riders and battle a lot of good riders, very, very encouraging. But I just hope he goes into Latvia with the same mindset, and he maybe doesn't adjust his goals now just to be in the top 10 next week, just because at the next round, just because he's had an extra 2 weeks on the bike. Just go out, have fun, and it's his rookie season at the end of the day. So try not to put too much pressure on himself. But if he keeps riding like that, and especially in the sand, he should improve as the season goes on for sure. But very, very encouraging.
Yeah, good to see, especially the way his season started. It was a bit of a nightmare. AMX 125, Fury took the win there. I'm not sure if I've said that right at all. It wasn't Tyson, but really, really good win for him. And those Fantics yet again seem to be the bike to beat.
Absolutely. It's turning into the Fantic show with Falk winning the first round and now his teammate Fury winning the second round. And he went 1-1 actually. What a story he is. He was relatively unknown when that team drafted him in last year, and he impressed so much last year they've kept him on, and now he's got the red plate, 8 points advantage over his teammate. So things could get tasty in that championship with 2 teammates going for the title. Yeah,
it definitely was. And Marek, an impressive third in the second moto as well. Young rider coming up. Yeah, he's one to watch out for, so he is. Got a lot of talent coming up from the 85 last year, so definitely one to watch out for sure. 7th overall is really good. Right. There was also Supercross, the triple header. Again, it was missing Cooper Webb, so another rider out, but at least Chase Sexton was back. And just on Cooper Webb, he's back with Alden Baker, which not a lot of people, I don't think, were expecting 2 or 3 months ago, but the seasons went that bad for Cooper. That looks like he's trying to find some familiarity and maybe to check boxes that he thinks, right, that's not the problem, this isn't the problem, and then he can maybe find the issue, go back to his normal schedule and see if he can get the flow going again. But then he's got injured in midweek, and it looks like, I think he hit his head, and he's hopefully going to be back next weekend. But that was another rider down for an increasingly depleted supercross field. And whenever you've seen the season at the start, 4 different winners, maybe any of 10 or 11 guys you felt could get a main event win or a podium. After that first 4 or 5 weeks, it really went downhill very quickly, and that's basically the Eli Tomac show in terms of the championship. But for the rest of the riders, a bit of hope, because it was Marvin Musquin that took the overall win. Amazingly, KTM's first win of the year. And Chase Sexton got a heat race win as well, or whatever they call each moto in those Triple Crowns. So slightly different results, but again, Eli Tomac kind of went back to normal in that third moto, taking the win, and it's pretty much, he's got his title locked down. I think he's even hoping to win it in 2 or 3 weeks' time to clinch that championship. Maybe Sir Jeffrey Hurley is coming to MN Nationals and Corolla, and he wants to get some outdoor prep on that Star Racing Yamaha.
Yeah, well, maybe in latest, but it was nice to see KTM and Marvin Musquin, who's Supercross only this year, of course, so he's only got a couple of races left, so it was nice to see him win and a new winner in the MS Supercross this season, so good to see. And with the triple header, something different, you get used to just one main event each week, but now and again it's nice to mix things up and have the triple headers, I think.
In 250 class, Jet Lawrence didn't actually win. He got bad starts, a crash as well. Actually made it a bit more exciting than what it usually, and when Jet just runs away at the front. RJ Hampshire got his win, and he was pretty emotional after it, but I was thinking he's won a Grand Prix before. The US Grand Prix, surely you would put that above winning a regional supercross race?
Yeah, possibly. But, they're American. So
they love supercross. Supercross is like what they grew up with, so it's their holy grail, as it were. But it was nice to see RJ get that win. He's certainly fast. He's always had speed, but staying off the ground has been a big issue for him. I think he crashed actually as well on Saturday night, but he still managed to get that overall win. And I think everyone knows he works hard. There's no lack of effort. Maybe sometimes he puts in too much effort, but for RJ Hampshire, he finally got that win. And Jet Lawrence, with that injury to Cameron McAdoo, who was his closest rival in points, a bit like Eli Tomac, it's kind of a situation where everyone knows who's going to win that championship. But for Jet, and for everyone watching the 250s, the biggest curiosity is now going to be Christian Craig versus Jet Lawrence in the combined racing. And let's hope they aren't afraid to battle, because if they both hold back, it won't be as fun whenever they're trying to defend their each respective points championships. Yeah, exactly. That's it. And possibly the biggest talking point was all about the Rocky Mountain KTM team coming into the event. That's possibly the biggest news. 1 minute the team's closing their doors, then the next minute there's a statement saying they're not closing the doors, but then they've no riders for the Supercross, so it'll be interesting to see how that one goes as well. Yeah, that was a bit of a mad week in terms of news for that team, and you have to feel sorry for Max Anstey, Joey Savacci, although he's injured at the minute anyway, and Shane McElrath, 3 good riders now currently looking for a new home. And it was a kind of bizarre online battle going back and forth with the team owner and Chris Cooksey, the media guy, who obviously has a certain personal axe to grind, but it looks like a lot of people have maybe a few axes to grind, and things have not went well at all. Forrest Butler said the team would be there and racing, and then it turned out they weren't. So not ideal, and mostly for the riders and obviously all the mechanics and stuff that work there. That was another 2 riders that should have been racing that weren't racing, so that didn't help the depth. But for Max Anstey and Shane McElrath and Joey Savacci, there's 3 quality riders, certainly top 10. And for Max, we know he's got a lot of speed outdoors as well as it's decent indoors. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up. I think I heard somebody saying, maybe you or someone else, that he's even looking at 250 options in America. But obviously there's going to be options in 450, probably in MXGP as well. So it'll be interesting to see what route Max goes. You would imagine Shane McElrath, he probably hasn't had the results this year that he wanted. He was a very good 250 supercross rider, and even outdoors, he was a bit inconsistent outdoors, but he had the odd moto win on a 250, so it might be almost even harder for him to find something. So they've been all dropped into a very unfortunate situation, and it'll be interesting to see what what comes of that if they all stay in America, if some of them have to go to Canada over the summer, if Max comes to GPs or they all get to drop down to 250. It's probably pretty stressful, especially for Max with having a new baby and all.
Absolutely. Well, I think the good news is there's been a lot of injuries, so there's a lot of fill-in rides available at the moment. So that's probably a blessing in disguise. Where they'll all end up will be interesting. Obviously, there's a factory KTM team and MXGP needing filling, which I would quite like Anstie to go there. But whether he wants to leave that American lifestyle and come to ride the bumpy llama after not seeing a bump for a couple of years, be pretty interesting. I don't think he'd want to leave that lifestyle either. So a 250 ride probably makes the most sense for him. Who knows if Pro Circuit or Star Yamaha have a spot for him, but it'll be interesting.
Yeah, something to keep an eye on. And of course, Supercross again this weekend. A break for MXGP and then back in Latvia, and then Latvia, Majora, and I think Spain it is. So a week off for the riders to kind of hone their craft or recuperate from bumps and bruises if you're the likes of Calvin Verlander and maybe Jago Gertz. But Andy, that's it for this week. Thanks for your input, and we'll speak to you again